The entire country has its eyes on the Supreme Court, waiting to see how it will rule to legalize same-sex marriage. Of course, this case has some strong ties here to Michigan.
That's right. April DeBoer, Jane Rouse challenged Michigan's ban on same-sex marriage after they were not allowed to adopt each other's children. A lot of legal experts think that the court will rule that states cannot prohibit same-sex marriage, but the issue is still very divisive.
Also, recently, a package of bills was introduced in Lansing that would make it more difficult for same-sex couples to get married, even if Michigan's ban is overturned. One of those would stop municipal and judicial officials from performing wedding ceremonies. Another would require all marriage certificates be signed by a religious leader. And a third would prevent the government from forcing religious leaders to perform same-sex marriages.
The bills were introduced by a pair of Republican representatives, but they have still drawn some criticism from some major conservative voices saying this is setting the party backwards. In a recent column in the Detroit News, Nolan Finley wrote, "I can't think when a more repulsive piece of legislation has hit the Capitol floor in Lansing or one that is more offensive to the Constitution." Yeah, those bills were introduced by a pair of Republicans in Lansing right there. We want to bring them on with us now. Todd Corser, who introduced the bill, along with Cindy Gamrat, also are joining us live from Lansing to talk about that. Mark Brewer is here from Progress, Michigan. So first of all, representatives, some pretty strong words from one of the prominent conservative voices here in Michigan. Do you have any response to the criticism of what you're trying to do?
Well, I appreciate that. There's been a lot of concern about these bills, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there concerning the bills. In reality, what the bills are doing, in no way do they limit gay marriage or straight marriage or atheist marriage. What they do is they take government out of the business of officiating marriage, and they place that into a situation where simply you file an affidavit with the county clerk attesting that you are married is one option. The second option is to do a religious ceremony. In no way does it limit the Supreme Court's ruling or do an end around the Supreme Court ruling if it so chooses to move in the direction of allowing same-sex marriage. So
why
I'm a
now
traditional
with this,
marriage
though,
guy,
then?
100%.
Right, and I understand that. I guess I wonder on the timing, because you say it wouldn't do anything regarding that ruling, but some would say, why now just before this ruling then?
Well, the bills were going to be coming in after the ruling, but our session ended before the ruling came out. So my intention was to wait and find out if the Supreme Court would indeed uphold traditional marriage, which I believe they should. But if they don't, I believe I'm supposed to provide leadership in that regard to make sure that we're bringing forth the discussion to talk about what the country is going to look like if the Supreme Court does indeed rule in favor of same-sex marriage.
Mark Brewer, let's bring you in right here. What do you think is going on in Lansing with this?
Well, I think this is clearly an effort, like the recent adoption bills by Representatives Corser, Gamrat, and their Republican colleagues, to continue to discriminate against the gay community in this state. It's quite disingenuous for the representative to sit there and say that this has nothing to do with the right of gay marriage. What's going to happen under these bills is a blatant unconstitutional imposition of religion on people. What these bills will do is force people to have a marriage in front of a religious official, whether they object to that or not. That's blatantly unconstitutional. It's a violation of our First Amendment rights of free exercise of religion. So again, for the representatives to sit there and say this has nothing to do with obstructing gay marriage is absolutely disingenuous and false. This is an example of the kind of bigotry that's going on here in Michigan, which is going to drive companies, drive jobs, drive people away from our state. We are increasingly seen as one of the most intolerant states in the country, and this bill is just the latest example of that.
Representative Gamrat, your response to what he had to say?
Well, you need to read all three bills to see how that's addressed and how anybody can go and fill out an affidavit. So that's just simply misrepresentation of the bills. But I also think we're missing a component here. It's important that, you know, if the Supreme Court rules against our constitutional amendment, I believe the people ought to have a voice. And how does Michigan look moving forward from that? And I think these bills offer the start of that conversation. I also think these bills offer protection so that government officials such as clerks and judges aren't forced to violate their deeply held conscious beliefs and their rights of conscience, and that I think are important. I don't think anyone wants to see anybody forced into that situation, and so these bills don't discriminate. They allow anybody, whether gay or straight, to get married, but you have to read all three bills to be able to understand that.